Hey there, this is James Wilson with MTB Street Training Systems at BikeJames.com, and today I wanted to share some thoughts on a recent video that was posted showing world champ Nino Shurter's training routine, basically one of his workouts that he does. And I had a couple people email and ask me what my thoughts were on it. And if you haven't seen it yet, then I'm going to just kind of show you. I found it on Pink Bike. You can find it pretty easily. So just checking it out, I'm going to go over a couple of pictures they had from it because basically it shows him doing some pretty interesting exercises, especially at the very beginning, some things that definitely aren't in the usual category of stuff. And so I think that a lot of people were looking to see, well, what's your opinion on these, somewhat interesting exercises that Nino's doing? Are these worth it or not? And so basically, I just wanted to kind of break down a little bit about what he was doing, tell you how I kind of look at these videos and stuff when they come out, these training with the pros stuff. People love these things, but again, you have to look at them through the right prism, I guess, through the right paradigm to really get the most out of them. And then a couple takeaways that I had. So just real quick, I'm going to switch to screen share mode, and then we're going to go from there. So going here, and so anyways, this is where I found it here on Pink Bike. And these were some of the pictures that from the video, and so you can see he's got his feet on a balance board doing it looks like a push-up with a T at the top. This was pretty interesting, this little paddle board. Again, you kind of got to watch the video to appreciate some of the stuff. Kind of like an ab rollout basically, but this is definitely a little more interesting variation. This was what he called his balance and coordination workout, if I remember correctly, and this is his coach who's putting this stuff together. Again, a lot of balance and a lot of these stuff, like again, like you don't see this stuff. This is not your normal average everyday equipment, average everyday normal everyday exercises. So again, I think a lot of people were trying to see like, well, what's your thoughts on this? But again, at the end of the video, he did finish off with some heavy squats and some heavy Bulgarian split squats, and this actually sparked off some interesting conversation. And if you haven't been to Pink Bike, the best part about Pink Bike is always the stuff going on, the comments underneath the posts. And so you always get a bunch of these armchair quarterbacks who have a ton of book knowledge, who don't necessarily have a ton of experience, telling people, saying, oh, this is wrong. Because in the video, you see him doing what basically amounts to like a quarter squat to a half squat. And so then you get the whole like, oh, he needs to be doing full range of motion. No, cyclists only need this range of motion. And so, again, it's like, who's right? Well, both of them are to some degree. But anyways, getting off subject there. But if you haven't seen it, check it out. It's definitely worth seeing. But here's my takeaways on it. So I put together a few notes just to kind of keep me on point here. So breaking down the champ's routine, 3 things to keep in mind. 1, this is a pro rider, and pro riders may as well be a different species than us. And I mean, they've hit the genetic lottery. People, the whole like 10,000 hour rule or genetics, it's a combination of both. There was a book that came out a couple years ago called The Sports Gene that did a really good job of looking at like, look, honestly, to become a professional athlete and take it to the highest level, you need a mixture of both. You need to have some genetic potential, some genetic gifts that the average person doesn't have, and you also need to be in an environment that allows you to get exposure to these sports and get a lot of exposure early. So again, a guy like Nino growing up in an area that's got just world-class, just mountain biking, and he's exposed to it from a young age, and he's got hit the genetic lottery with the with the endurance side. So he's got a lot of things going on for him that the average person doesn't. He also has all day to train. Like if you come to me and say, hey, I've got 4 hours a day to train versus 4 hours a week to train, I'm going to do a lot different stuff with you. So Nino's got nothing to do but train and recover. And so again, he can add in some stuff that I wouldn't take out necessarily, tell someone like, hey man, take out some of the basics to focus on some of that stuff. But if you've got your basics covered, then adding some of that other stuff, it may not be a bad idea. But anyway, so the point is just understand this is a pro rider, and they really are kind of a different species than us, both in the just kind of the genetic gifts that they have, the time and energy they have to put into training, the environment that they're in. All of these things are things that we just can't even come close to understanding or being able to replicate as an average rider. So you got to keep that in mind. Number two is you can't argue with results. If it's working for him, then it's working for him. So, just as a strength coach, I'm not going to, look at another coach's routine, especially someone who's having success, and be like, oh, this is wrong, that's wrong. I may have a difference of opinion on some things and how you go about, doing some stuff. But again, you got to understand, like, this guy, Nino's a different animal. My next point, we'll kind of get into this a little bit more. You got to keep the big picture in mind when you're looking at these things. But two is you can't argue with results. If it's working, it's working. And sitting there and like trying to nitpick, like I said, there's guys that were making me laugh in the pink bike comments, because it's like, dude, this guy's the world champ. If the world champ's doing quarter squats, then maybe there's something to do in quarter squats. Maybe you need to figure out, maybe it's not all quarter squats all the time, but maybe there's more to it than that. But anyway, so number three is, this is one moment in a lifetime of training. And that's something that we really lose sight of a lot with this stuff. The fancy specialized stuff that looks great for the camera is usually built on a solid foundation of boring basics that no one saw. So I'll guarantee you that Nino has a ton of, just regular basic exercises and movements underneath his belt. And the specialized, high level stuff that we were seeing in that video, again, when they're making videos, you got to play to the camera a little bit. And so you show some cool stuff. And so it's just an idea, remembering, as if you're not a professional rider, you have to keep these things in mind. And, this is one moment in time. Like, his peak is built on a strong base of the basics. And if you remove that base, those fancy exercises aren't going to be doing the same thing for him. So, are those things helping him? Maybe so. But all I know is that they're probably more than likely built on this extremely strong foundation of the basics. And if you remove that foundation, I don't think those other exercises would have quite the same effect. And so if you don't have that same foundation, then those same specialized exercises aren't going to have the same effect. You just need to keep working on those basics. So 3 takeaways that I had from the video. Number one, he uses the strength and power training program as an integral part of his program. So stronger, more powerful riders will perform better. I mean, he is not, he's very serious about his strength training, as you can see. I mean, even if you are just doing a quarter to a half squat, I mean, that's a lot of weight, especially for a guy who doesn't weigh that much. And so the idea that, the world champ in cross country racing uses strength and power training as an integral part of his training program, that should tell you something if you're trying to get better at the endurance side of stuff. With mountain biking, because if he uses it, then it must help his endurance. 2, he thinks about the demands of his sport and tries to find ways to address them. So he isn't following a program designed for a road biker. He's actually, you'll see many times he's talking about, him and his coach are talking about the specific demands of mountain biking and having to deal with descents and rock gardens and punchy climbs followed by demanding descents and stuff like that. So he is putting time and effort and energy into thinking about the demands for his actual sport, and then trying to address those actual things, not just blindly following a program from another sport because that's what he's told. Hey man, this is the way you train for mountain biking, follow a road riding program. And so, again, that's something to take away from that. And then finally, man, he's dedicated to his program. I mean, you can tell. You don't walk in the gym and start putting up weights like that and moving like he does without being consistent with your training. And really consistent time and effort, man, those are the real key to long-term progress. It's not, this fancy exercise or half squats versus full squats, or, Bulgarian split squats versus 2-legged squats. I mean, yeah, those things can, using those things properly and in the right way can definitely help. But the really consistent time and effort is the key. And so, you can tell in watching him work out that he has taken his strength and training program seriously. He's taken his overall training program seriously, and that's why he is where he is. So you combine those genetic gifts that he has with the work ethic that he has, and you get a world champion. But without that consistent time and effort, those genetic gifts would be wasted. And so, again, just, the takeaway for me was like, man, this guy's dedicated to his program. And, if you look past the specific stuff that he's doing, you see, that putting in consistent time and effort. And so anyway, so that's it with that. I'm gonna go ahead and break out of here and close this down. So anyway, so that's it. That's just kind of my thoughts on that. Again, it's just having the right perspective and then knowing what to take away from it. But you know, realistically, for most of you guys listening to this, it's the bulk of what you need to be doing is focusing on the basics, learning how to hinge properly, learning how to squat properly, fixing your upper body, your thoracic mobility, getting your shoulders more stable. You know, those basic things are what's really going to help most of you guys see the biggest impact on your riding on the trail. And so adding in some of the cool little stuff or some of the specialized stuff is all right. But, you know, again, you either need to make sure that you've got this really strong foundation of the basics, you already have your basic strength levels down, you already move very well, or else you need to just use it sparingly and not try to make it a big part of your program. So, but that's about it. So anyways, once again, this has been James Wilson with MTB Strength Training Systems. You can check me out on the web at bikejames.com. Got a bunch of free stuff you can check out there, free workout programs for you to start seeing kind of how I recommend people get started using strength training to help them with mountain biking. And yeah, so hope you guys have enjoyed this, got a little bit out of it, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one.